Hey guys, want to make your home cozier and save a little more money? Take a free online energy assessment from Energy Trust of Oregon. It's fast, easy, and gives you personalized tips to boost your home energy savings, lower bills, and more comfort. Shoot, I'm taking this quiz. Let's take it together at visitenergytrust.org/assessment. We can join thousands of Oregonians already making smarter energy moves. That's energytrust.org/assessment. Lansu Chinese Garden is celebrating 25 years of culture, community, and connection this September. If you haven't been, it's the gem of the historic Old Town Chinatown neighborhood. And now is the perfect time to discover why Lansu is more than a garden. They're inviting everyone to help them celebrate their milestone with discounted admission, cultural performances, historical exhibits, and so much more. You can go to lansugarden.org for more details. That's LANSU garden.org. Circle V Portland, presented by Veganizer, is back on Sunday, September 14th at Castaway. It's Portland's premier vegan tasting experience. It's where chefs from your favorite vegan restaurants like Plant-Based Papi, Au Bon Chocudo, and Mis Tacones, just to name a few, are working in pairs to create unique collaborative dishes. Tickets include 10 of these collaborative dishes, some small bites, and drink tastings. And a portion of ticket sales benefits local nonprofits. You can grab your tickets at circlevportland.com. That's circlevportland.com. Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about a national consulting firm walking back their offer of free services to Portland City Council, Mayor Wilson employing an interesting tactic when asking Portlanders to help with his new overnight shelters, and the City Election Division's proposal to hike filing fees to discourage non-serious candidates from running for office. Joining me on this week's Friday News Roundup are Willamette Week City Hall reporter Sophie Peel and our very own senior producer Julia Fiaioni. It's Friday, September 12th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Hey, before we jump in real quick, I just wanted to share that we are still looking for someone to join our team part-time as our social media manager/strategist. So if you are talented at telling smart and interesting stories on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and love Portland as much as we do, we would love to meet you. Consider this a desperate personal plea because not only do we really need the help, it also mostly falls on me otherwise. And y'all, I am so bad at it and I just don't have the time. So please help. We pay money. The link to apply is in our show notes. Deadline for getting applications in is on the 15th this Monday. All right, on to our Friday News Roundup. Sophie, Julia, thanks for hanging out with me this morning.
Hi, Claudia.
Good morning.
For those of you new to the show, today is a day we break down some of the biggest local stories of the week with some of the best and brightest journalists in town. But before we jump into the news, I usually ask our guests an opening question so our listeners can get to know them a little better. And today's opening question is related to yesterday's show about some of the scariest intersections in Portland for bicyclists and pedestrians. So I know one of you until recently didn't own a car. Julia, you were walking and skateboarding everywhere. And Sophie, you've had a car, but you were mostly on bike until you recently discovered you like being in cars.
Yes, that's correct. I did tell Claudia that over text.
Oh, no.
Anyhow, I'm curious, in your commuting, when you were pedestrians, when you were biking, what intersection brought you the most dread in like daily life?
So I would commute to work. And at the time I was living in the Woodlawn neighborhood in Northeast Portland. And so I would be like going along Tillamook and Vancouver and like all very just like streets that are very well set up for bikes, like great bike lanes. But then I would go onto this like little side street before I took a right on Broadway to get onto the Broadway Bridge. And turning onto Broadway, because there's like, it's either 2 or 3 lanes of cars that are coming pretty fast. And like half the cars choose to go on the Broadway Bridge. And then the other half choose to turn, like get in the right-hand lane. And the bike lane is sandwiched between the right-hand lane and the lane that goes onto the Broadway Bridge.
Ugh.
And like
Yeah.
half the cars, I couldn't tell which cars were going to travel into the right-hand lane. I'm just like a little bike and I have these cars flying. And so every time when I decided to turn and merge, I just had to sort of trust that the cars, one, were seeing me, and two, weren't trying to get into the right-hand lane at the same time that I was merging. Every time I was like, this might be it.
Oh my
Oh.
God, that's so scary.
At some point, I just had to like punch it.
Oh God. But you shouldn't have to think about that on your way to
No, I know, but
wherever you're
here's the thing.
going.
I don't think it's like a P-bot problem. Like, I think this was
Sure.
me just being a bit of a cavalier biker. Like,
Mm.
I just think nothing bad is ever going to happen to me. And so I probably take risks when I shouldn't on a bike. And that's on me.
Well,
Ugh.
I'm looking at it. Yes, I totally see what you're saying. Because either they're making a left or they're making a right. And you're right there. Okay.
Yes.
She's not lying, folks. That is
I'm
a
not
scary
lying.
intersection.
If you can believe it, I'm not lying.
It's a
I
scary
didn't know it'd be
intersection.
verified on the spot for
Seriously.
this
Oh,
question. This
For
is
sure.
serious.
Now that you know that I am verified, Julia, what
I know,
about
I'm like,
your
oh my God.
Just- what about you, Julia?
Okay, so this is tough for me because I lived in the Central East Side, and I think most all of the main streets in that area are super dangerous to walk around in. On Northeast Sandy and 28th, there was one afternoon right in the heat of 5 o'clock commuter traffic where I was walking over to the zipper right there to get some food. I was about to cross the street, and there was red lights and everything, perfect time to cross. And this person just, I guess, completely ignored the red light and just zoomed through the intersection, ended up hitting a bus,
Oh.
hitting another car, and then spiraling out into the middle of that intersection on Northeast Sandy. And it was like really wild to see. And it made me think a lot about like, holy shit, what if I just crossed and didn't actually look and this person comes zooming through? And it just goes to show you how active those two main streets are and like how common situations like that are where when you're walking around there, like you are constantly, your head is just on a pivot. Like you have to be paying attention.
Yeah, the whole Burnside and Sandy are kind of close to each other.
Yes,
That whole
yeah.
area is just so
Crazy.
dangerous for pedestrians. I remember, I don't know if they got killed, but they got hit just crossing, trying to get onto the Burnside Bridge, walking. You know how like you go and there's like the Fair Hair Dumbbell or whatever that building is? That whole area, I know, like, because people are just like jamming
Zooming.
in and just zoom.
Yeah.
They're going too fast. I think they see Burnside as like a highway almost.
It does feel that way.
In my daily life, the worst intersection for me is when I'm biking. I have to jump from Ida, it's like North Ida, to Willamette Boulevard. It's traffic coming at you from all directions, and there's no crosswalk, stop signs, nothing, just like a whole lot of luck and timing. Traffic,
Ugh.
it reminded me of what you were saying, Sophie, like trying to get into Broadway to cross the bridge. And what's most annoying is that's the most recommended route to get out of St. John's in almost all bike-friendly maps because it's just so hard to find points that cross over the cut without going miles and miles out of your way. There's like maybe 3 access points, And the cut, if you didn't know, is like the physical manifestation of Greater Portland giving St. John's the middle finger for like over a century now. The cut is literally that. It cuts off St. John's from the rest of Portland. The other intersection I'm positive is going to cause a pedestrian death is on North Baltimore and Willamette. It's just Willamette, basically. There's a stop sign that like no one can see because of some greenery. And even if they could, everyone is just driving too fast to really catch it. And to add to the danger, like those same bushes are obscuring pedestrians as they step into the intersection.
Oh
Also,
my God.
It's really hard for drivers to see anyone stepping in. But also, like most people in Portland don't stop before the stop sign. They stop after the stop sign because they can't see past the intersection because everyone parks to the very corner of every intersection.
Yeah.
According to PBOT, that's illegal, but there's no yellow lines and there's no enforcement. But anyhow, watch out, guys. Don't just like walk into intersections. I just want to give that. Just seriously, if you're new to Portland, people are not stopping before the stop sign. They stop way after.
You got to keep your head on a swivel if you're walking
Yeah.
around. Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, thank you both for your answers. I hope everyone is properly scared to go walking now, just on the
Yay.
street. On to the news of the week. Sophie, what are you bringing us this week?
Yeah, this week I'm talking about a story I wrote about a really well-regarded consulting group called HRNA Advisory. that actually has quite a bit of money dedicated to helping cities and towns that have recently changed forms of government and actually helping those new administrations and those new elected officials sort of understand, develop procedures, develop relationships. But they're really well regarded in this kind of very specific area. And, they're based in DC, but they do a lot of political stuff. So in the spring, and the Oregonian had initially reported this, that firm had approached the city and said, hey, we would like to offer you our consulting services for free. And at the time, the city council was really grappling with just like, they didn't have infrastructure, really. They didn't know how to, move a policy through committees to get it to the full council to pass it. They were having constant disagreements about Robert's Rules of Order. And there were just some interpersonal tensions happening too between counselors. And so when that firm basically pitched their idea, their offer to the city council, some of the city councilors really took issue that the city was going to accept this consultant without, doing due diligence as far as going through an official bid procurement process. And so because there was some discomfort and primarily it was counselors Loretta Smith and Samir Kanal that said, no, we need like a more official process. We can't just accept free services. How do we know this is the best person for the job? The city ended up putting them through an actual procurement process. And there were a number of bidders. And just recently, the city narrowed it down to the final 2 bidders, one of which was actually asking for money. And then HRNA, which as far as I can tell, was still going to say like, yeah, we're going to do this for free. And then HRNA a couple weeks ago just dropped out. They said, we're not interested in this contract anymore. We don't want it. And so that left the city with one remaining bidder that was asking for $100,000 for this work. That was their estimate. And the city council was basically like, well, we don't have any money allocated to this. So like, there's no offer at this time.
I'm just curious what the incentive was for HRNA to give their services away for free.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it's a little cynical, but also I'm just like, but why? They're not from Portland. It's a national organization. And I know that both Loretta Smith and Samir Kanal took issue with that because they were just like, why are they coming here? I know there was a lot of like, what do they want? And there's a bit, part of me is like, what do they want?
Yeah. So what I know is that HRNI Advisory, first of all, they do consulting in pretty much every single area. Like they are very well heeled. They're very established. I don't know what they make annually, but like consulting firms bring in a lot of money. This is the one area, as far as I can tell, that they offer sort of free, more not philanthropic, but like more civically minded services. And I believe they have a special pot of funding that comes from a philanthropist that they dedicate towards this. But HRNA Advisory is not like a free consulting firm for everything, because I think that would be like, something's a little weird. I think this is their one piece where they're very like, they have dedicated funding towards helping governments kind of establish rules and procedures and also relationships. And it's funded through a different source than
I see what you're
most
saying.
of their other things.
Yeah, it's like when a very big ad company gives a smaller local company free services just because it's part of their pro bono thing. And they're just like, this is how we funnel this money.
Yes.
But also how we keep good relations. And also it's in our best interest. That kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. This is making me wonder if HRNA was looking from the outside during this period where city council was like, wait, let's weigh our options. Like, let's like get into this a little bit more. And just seeing how they were approaching it, they were discouraged from thinking that they could be helpful, just from the outside. I don't know how like realistic that is, but it makes me wonder.
Yeah. And, I had some conversations that, and I didn't include this in the story, but my hunch based on some conversations I had is that HRNA was sort of watching how the council was talking about them. The council was pretty hard on them, like really questioned them about like, kind of, why are you here? Why do we think a national firm is going to help with us 12 counselors who are specific to Portland? Like, I think there was some distrust of like, why are DC people going to fly out to Portland and make us like get along? Like there was resistance to HRNA. And I also think they may have looked at just how the council was moving and being like, whoa, there's a lot of problems here. There's a lot of problems.
Well, not
totally off base then.
I don't think you're far off base, Julia. I really don't.
That's so brutal though.
Yeah. It is. And I think if that is the case, I hope it's a bit of a wake up call to this council that like, you got to start figuring some stuff. They're spinning their wheels right now on process and procedures. And like, they just can't even agree on like the smallest thing. And we're just getting stuck in these like 2.5, 3 hour long conversations with very little resolve. about like small procedural things. And it's I don't know, it's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you see all of these meetings play out. So you're seeing a lot more of the frustrations and the back and forth than we do when they finally make the headlines. But I'm curious, like, what's next? Are they at all looking to find another consulting firm to help them talk to each other? Because that's what it appears, that's what the main goal is. Or are they just like, well, whatever?
So Council Vice President Tiffany Koyama-Lane was really the one to talk to HRNA and go through this process. And like, she was really the one who was like, I want to get a consulting firm in here to help us get along, basically. And the last she said, and I think this was during last week's council meeting, is she explained the situation. She explained that one of them had dropped out. That was HRNA. That left them with one bidder who was asking for $100K for, this work. And she was like, City Council hasn't allocated any budget to that. So at this point, this entire effort is dead in the water. And she was clearly very like upset about it. Like, she even said that. She was like, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she basically communicated like, I am very disappointed in this outcome.
Ugh.
And I hope they all are, honestly. Like, we had a free thing, and like, Portland's dying for free things right now.
Yeah.
Free quality things. Like, that's kind of rare.
Ugh.
So it's a bummer. It's a bummer.
Yeah. Man. So what I'm hearing is that there's no real next steps.
Yeah, I think Koyama-Lane, she's a teacher by trade. And I think she kind of put on her teacher voice of like disappointed teacher a little bit. She's like, you guys messed this up. Like, it didn't have to be this way.
She's like taking a gold star off of everybody's
just
like
one at a
counselor
time going down the
cubby.
line. I would love if she implemented a star system. That would be very, very, and she like gives 6 to herself.
She took from everybody else's.
That's what I would do if I were a teacher.
That's hilarious. All right. Well, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, more headlines of the week.
CityCast Portland is brought to you by Diamore Law Group. Let's face it, sometimes bad stuff happens. A serious injury, a catastrophic accident, or even a wrongful death. It can turn your world upside down. When it does, you deserve unwavering support from a dedicated team. Yep, you need a lawyer. Diamore Law Group has over 30 years of experience protecting the rights of Oregonians. Their team of skilled attorneys, led by distinguished trial attorney Tom Diamore, will work tirelessly to make sure your voice is heard and your rights are protected. Here's what one of his clients said. Tom fights for his clients from the first day they meet him through the last day of trial. If you or a loved one needs help holding those responsible for your injuries accountable, contact Diamore Law Group at 503-222-6333 or visit diamorelaw.com to schedule a free consultation. They are committed to fighting for the justice and compensation you deserve right here in Portland.
Freem Family Brewers has opened up a second location in Milwaukee just south of Portland, so you no longer have to make the trek all the way to Hood River just to get to their 20-plus taps of award-winning beer. They've moved into the historic Milwaukee City Hall building right into the old firehouse, and I hear they turned the old fire pole into a fully functioning tap. I would like to see that. Plus, this new location has 3 bars with seasonal cocktails, in addition to all the harder to find Freem beers. My go-to is the Japanese lager, and they're serving practically the same menu as their Hood River location, so you know their food is solid. I recommend anything on the menu that has their house-made beer cheese. It's so delicious. Freem Milwaukee is open daily from 11:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. You can see their full menu at freembeer.com. That's P-F-R-I-E-M beer.com. Cooler weather's on the way, and if your windows are drafty or leaky, now is the time to act. This month, you can get 50% off all window styles at Window Nation. You can also put 0 down, make 0 payments, and pay 0 interest for 2 whole years. That's right, you could pay nothing until 2027. Window Nation uses windows made right here in Portland by Milgard. That's a good brand. They've got both an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and a 96% customer satisfaction rating with over 45,000 5-star reviews. Installation crews finish the job in 1 day or less, so you can enjoy what's that's left of summer with minimal disruption. And I gotta tell you, I had all of my windows replaced recently, and it's crazy how much more energy efficient my house has become. It's also just quieter, which I was not expecting. You can schedule a fast free estimate now with Window Nation at windownation.com. That's windownation.com, license number OR 249065. All right, Julia, what's your story this week?
So my story this week actually comes from some reporting by you, Sophie, and Shanth Nanganeri from Oregon Capital Chronicle. And I'm talking about Portland Mayor Keith Wilson making a call out to Portlanders to help in addressing our ongoing homelessness crisis. So specifically, he's asking for volunteers of all kinds, from teachers to builders, and donations as small as like a bag of snacks. So really just like all hands on deck. And this comes at the same time as emergency overnight and daytime shelters have opened in Northwest recently. And this is a part of Mayor Wilson's multi-month effort to end unsheltered homelessness before the end of the year in Portland. But the thing that really stuck out in this was the connection that Mayor Wilson made to the Trump administration recently deploying ICE and National Guard agents in both LA and Washington, D.C. to, quote, clean them up, but ultimately destroying communities and causing a lot of chaos across the board, which we've all seen a lot about. But I want to read this quote directly from Mayor Wilson's message last week, really to grasp the gravity of what he's saying regarding this connection. So here it goes. Recent events in Washington, D.C. show us what will happen to Portland if we don't move with speed, purpose, and compassion to address the humanitarian crisis on our streets. The federal administration deploys bulldozers and mass arrests by masked agents, the opposite of our outreach worker and emergency shelter strategy. Let's work together by volunteering and donating and prove the administration's heavy-handed tactics are not needed in our city, which is a lot. So before I continue, I really want to hear both of your initial thoughts on this, because it was really alarming to me, and it just like it just felt really heavy when I read this last week.
I had a lot of thoughts about this, and like I think my first knee-jerk reaction was like, Mayor Keith Wilson is doing something that, as far as I know, past mayors have not done, which is really just be kind of vulnerable and be like, we need help. And I appreciate that about him. And like, I think he wants to get Portlanders involved. And I will say, one of the things I've like heard from a lot of Portlanders and readers over the past 4 or 5 years is like, we want to help and we just don't know how. Like, it feels like the city's like resistant to us helping. And like, okay, well, here you go. Mayor Keith Wilson is asking for soft skills. He's asking for educators. He's asking for like, you know, exercise equipment. He's asking for carpenters. He's asking for anyone who can paint. He's asking for someone who can help with resume building. Like, he's basically saying like, bring anything you can. Like, part of me is like, that's cool. Like, I wish there was more of that. And then I think there's another part of me that is like concerned about if this is out of desperation. And that makes me nervous that he's starting to realize that like, okay, there's a lot more barriers than I thought there would be to putting up these shelters. Like, there's all these costs that we didn't know we would need. And I think his sort of, you know, head in the clouds mentality a little bit, which I think is part of the reason he got elected and part of the reason that people really like warmed up to him, was like, oh God, he's so positive. I'm a little nervous that he's starting to realize like, oh shit, this is more complicated than I thought it was. And he's sort of like put the cart in front of the horse. And I do think Trump sending in the National Guard is a very real threat, because we've seen it done in other cities, and it obviously has done absolutely nothing good or productive. And we do not want Trump's attention right now by any means. And I also wonder if it was kind of convenient, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing at all, if it was kind of convenient for Keith Wilson to kind of light a fire under people's butts and say like, if we don't do this, if you don't help me, Trump's going to come. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing if he used that.
Oh, I am.
Claudia, how do you feel about it?
I mean, that alone, I was like, are you threatening us with Trump? And here's the deal. He didn't outright say, hey, if you don't help us, Trump is coming. Because obviously he himself is not calling Trump. There's just no way. That's political suicide. But he's basically saying, it felt really weird. It felt kind of like, Dad's gonna come home and he's gonna, do you know what I mean? Like, it felt like, like, are you infantilizing us in this weird way? And because I agree with you, Sophie, when he started asking for help, I was like, oh, that's really smart. One, that's how people actually become invested in movements, is if they have a piece in it. if they have a personal stake. I think that's what we should have been doing from the get-go. Because Portlanders love volunteering. Portlanders love helping.
Here's my thing. I think I would take more issue with it, but I think I'm thinking of it as more of like a means to an end thing.
Sure.
Sure. And if the end is that we actually stand up shelters and those shelters work, which is a whole other question of whether or not these shelters are like appropriate and staff, all that, because I think there are consequences to haste that the mayor has not like felt yet. But like, I don't know, to me, if it's like, if there's a net good at the end, I don't really care like what he...
No, man, because it sounds, here's the deal. It's like, do you think we're dumb? Like that's immediately, I don't know if it's just like the defiant, you can't control me, man, part of me. But I'm just like, there's so many of us in like Portland. That's the wrong strategy to get a bunch of bad kids in school
to behave.
to behave or help you out. Because you think we're fucking idiots? Do you know what I mean? Like, we know what you're doing, buddy. Like,
okay.
that's immediately what came out. I was just like, get out of here.
I'm so glad I asked, because that really is the two ends of it for me, where I kind of jump back and forth between like, man, like he's got a good point, and like, hey, wait a second, like you're deploying the same kind of fear tactics that we don't like about the other side of this.
Exactly.
But the thing is, obviously Mayor Keith Wilson's concerns are not unfounded, as a lot of us know, and just days after Mayor Wilson sent out his call for help, in a video press release, Trump was discussing cities he may target next, and of course, Portland was called out specifically. He was saying that he's going to, quote, look at Portland because of all the destruction that's going on in our city right now.
Because of what?
Because he was showed videos of the 2020 protests when he sent federal agents to intervene, making matters worse. That's what he was commenting on, not the ongoing protests at the ICE facility in Southwest, which recently a spokesperson from the Portland Police Bureau had been quoted saying that it's, quote, dwindled down for the most part, and that there are still some folks, a small number of people that are protesting there, but there's no reason to be sending the National Guard.
But it wasn't, I'm sorry, but Trump wasn't saying, oh, there's so much homelessness and this poor mayor has no help.
It's true.
He was basically talking about my federal agents, my federal will is being somehow thwarted, or, there is resistance to what I am trying to do across cities. I'm going to go in there and just throw my will around. It wasn't at all because like, oh, Portland, so much homelessness. Ugh.
Sure.
I'm just saying it's two different things. He used Mayor Wilson, a very real threat of ICE, where at that point I'm just like, then take care of ICE, Mayor Wilson. Then figure that out. If you don't want them stomping our grounds, it's ICE. It has nothing to do with the shelters. But sorry, go on.
No, that's okay. I totally see what you mean. And I think there's something to say about Trump being pretty vague with his claims anyway. It's all about just cleaning up and taking care of whatever it is that's not seemingly right in his eyes. So I can see where that is a stretch, but also where Mayor Wilson is coming from. And to Trump's statement, Mayor Wilson responded, reminding him that his administration is absolutely not welcome or needed at this time because there's not any sort of need for it. But I do want to touch on a little bit of hopeful news with that situation. And that is that our Oregon state leaders have been really starting to organize in the case that Trump does overstep how to hold him accountable. So recently, Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield said that he was coordinating with Governor Tina Kotek and others to take Trump to court if he oversteps. And he pointed out that his office has been actually preparing for this possibility since Trump took office, which is really scary and sad, but at the same time, a little bit comforting. And he pointed out a recent ruling by a federal judge saying that the deployment of the National Guard in LA was actually illegal, which is not surprising. But of course, there are so many loopholes and appeals processes in place that the ruling doesn't actually stop this from happening in other cities across the U.S. currently. And for some context, earlier this year, legislators tried to give Governor Tina Kotek more power regarding the deployment of Oregon's National Guard with House Bill 3954, but it died in the Senate when Republicans ran out the clock at the end of the legislative session. So back in July, Representative Bonamici, Senator Merkley, and Senator Wyden reintroduced legislation that was discussed in Congress back in 2020, aimed at, quote, preventing deployment of federal law enforcement unless requested by the governor and mayor. So basically, there aren't any real solid specifics confirmed at this point, but it sounds like there's a lot of momentum with our state leaders right now to prepare for a Trump intervention. This is only so comforting because this is something that would have to come in the aftermath of things getting really bad. So I don't know. That's kind of the long and the short of it is like, yes, Mayor Wilson is propping up this threat to people of Portland to try to get people to volunteer, but there's also a lot happening on the back end to try to address these things on a larger level too.
Yeah. Well, Julia, thanks for looking into that. Let's take a quick break here, and when we come back, more headlines of the week. This episode is brought to you by Mubi, a global streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema. On Mubi, you can stream beautiful, hand-picked films anytime, anywhere. And right now they're streaming Vices Broke, directed by author, producer, host, and chef Eddie Wong. This documentary follows the wild rise and fall of Vice, from a scrappy Montreal alt-punk zine to a $5.7 billion media empire, and ultimately to its dramatic bankruptcy. You can watch Vices Broke and so much more exclusively on Mubi, and the best part is you can try it free for 30 days on us. Just head to mubi.com/citycast25. That's mubi.com/citycast25.
I love wearing denim, but during the summer, sometimes putting on a pair of jeans can feel like wrapping a heated blanket around your legs. It just gets so hot. This past weekend, though, I wore my new Doer jeans when I was out running errands around town in 80-degree weather, and I was comfortable all day long. Honestly, they don't even feel like normal pants. Doer jeans have 5 times the stretch of traditional denim, so they move with you, but they do still look sharp. And the fabric has something called CoolMax built in, which helps regulate your body temperature and wick away moisture. Plus, they're antibacterial, which means you can wear them more and wash them less. Doer is opening a new store right here in Portland at 820 Northwest 23rd later this month. If you stop by the store, mention our code CCPDX and you'll get 15% off your first order. Or you can just go use it online at shopdoer.com/CCPDX for 15% off. That's shopdoer.com/CCPDX.
Okay, well, this week I'm looking into how the city might be hiking up filing fees to run for all elected positions in City Hall. So right now that's mayor, city council, and auditor. And the reasoning is that it would deter non-serious candidates from flooding our ballots. Jamie Goldberg and Shane Dixon Kavanaugh from the Oregonian reported on this earlier this week. And just a little backstory as to why they're even considering this change. One, we do get a ton of random ass candidates that run, a lot of times clearly as a joke, and bless them, it does make voting more fun. For me anyhow. But now that we have ranked choice voting, it's just a little too much. Last year's big city election saw 118 candidates run either for mayor or city council. And since we also jumped over to ranked choice voting, there was just like a lot of names to go through. The city's election division said its review of post-election data showed that the high number of candidates led to voters feeling overwhelmed. Candidates themselves were complaining about how there weren't enough resources for them. And election results were more difficult to read. How long did it take for everything to wrap up? It took a long time, you know?
Yeah.
But I do want to remind folks that even with all the candidates we needed to sort through and all that figuring out of the new ranked choice system, our last general election still had a 72% turnout. And that's an increase from the previous general election. So it's not like it's deterring voters. Right now, it only costs $75 to run for city council and $100 to run for either mayor or auditor. That's it. You just need that money. So the city is proposing 3 fee increases ranging from a minimal to moderate to high. The lowest increase would only raise the filing fee by $25 for city council and $175 for mayor and auditor, meaning if you want to run for city council, it will now cost you $100 to file and $275 to run for mayor or auditor. The highest option would make the filing fees $1,332 for city council and $1,755 for mayor and auditor, which amounts to 1% of the salary provided to city council members and the mayor respectively. But something that is not being said overtly, and I think might also be the case, is that the city just needs more money. Like, I know they're just like, hey, there's too many candidates, but also I think that the election office is like, how can we make our bureau a bit more profitable? And I'm sure every bureau has been given this conversation. But before I move on and I give you a little overview of what other cities are doing, what do you guys think? Like, do you think this impedes democracy by like limiting lower income folks from running, or is this proposed fee hike just a common sense move in the right direction?
I think it's like always a balance of not impeding democracy and making sure that elections are open to everyone. And also like having a slightly higher barrier to entry. And like selfishly speaking, Willamette Week for our endorsements invited every single candidate into our office for endorsement interviews. And like 3/4 of the people who showed up were not serious people. Like they really weren't. And they were never going to get more than like 5% of the vote. And it was just like, God, why are you here? And it was hard. And I also think fatigue of choice is really real. And my theory, and I don't know if this is true, but like I'm in District 4. And when I saw 25 candidates on my ballot, like I can totally see how if I wasn't researching these people, if that wasn't my job, I would go with like the 3 people whose name I recognized. Who has time to research 25 people? No one. So you go with like the people whose ads you see the most of, or whose flyer you got. And so I think it like, in a way, like having 25 candidates actually helps like establishment candidates a lot who are able to have money behind their campaigns and, or even if it's grassroots support. But I think it actually like helped the people whose name recognition was sort of already out there. And so I think this is wonderful. If I had my druthers, like I would probably split the difference between like the $100 and the $1,200, like 400, 500, because even that I think would really cut down the number of candidates that filed. I think it's a great idea. I really do.
This one for me, initially I was like, whoa, hold on a second. Like almost $2,000 just to run? Like that's a lot of money. But I did remember that there are alternatives for folks that may see that as a deterrent, right? There are ways to waive the fee for low-income folks, and you can get signatures instead. So it's not like it's the only way. I think if it were the only way, that would be a huge problem for me, because that is seemingly very unfair. But at this point, I do think that the fee is a little bit too low. Like there were 118 people running for mayor or city council last year. Like that is an absolutely massive number. So we have to find some way to rein that in.
So other cities, candidates generally pay more to run for office than they do in Portland. The city's election office noted that Seattle already charges candidates a filing fee equivalent to 1% of the annual salary for the office that they're running for. In Los Angeles, though, candidates for mayor have 2 options for meeting the filing fee requirement. Either they're paying a $300 filing fee and they have to collect 500 signatures. It's not either or. It's like...
Oh, I like that.
I like that too.
That makes sense.
So, or they pay no filing fee, but they have to collect 1,000 signatures. Julie, you seemed to look into it. How many signatures does Portland need?
500, which I think seems about in line with what other cities are doing.
500, but you pay no fee. You know what I mean? And in LA, you don't have to pay any fee to run for city council. You just need a specific number of valid signatures. In New York City, there is no fee for mayor. You just need to collect 3,750 valid signatures. Same with city council, just a specific number of signatures. And the same goes in Boston. It's like thousands of signatures. And honestly, I think signatures is a great idea. I feel like it's not a financial barrier for lower income candidates. And it would still eliminate fringe candidates and jokesters, unless of course they're like super popular. It also I also think that like it proves that you're in the community. You're already active in organizing and leading. And if you can't get a few hundred or even 1,000 folks to vouch for you, don't waste everyone's time.
Yeah. And there is something to say about like time is money, right? Like the fact that like in some cities they're asking for thousands of signatures is a bit prohibitive, because like these folks are still working their regular jobs before they get hired to work for the city. But there is a nice balance there, right? Like we could raise the fee a little bit, maybe raise the signature amount a little bit, and then it feels like a nice coupling of the two to prove that these people have like legitimate intentions.
I think in my ideal world, it would be a combination of gathering signatures. And I think like not just like a couple hundred, like 500, even 1,000, like show you have grassroots support, and also show that you're like willing to run a viable campaign. Because there's also people who run for office that like, honestly, $1,200 would not be a lot for them, but they have no support.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Well, I don't know if you guys want to put in your 2 cents. They are actually asking for input. The city is. There is a survey. In the survey, it basically asks you to choose between the low, the medium, and the high option. But then there's actually like a little comment box. So if you wanted to add your own thoughts, like Sophie would, saying, hey, you should also add signatures, you can do so yourself. We're going to put that link in our show notes. And they're taking these surveys until the 15th. You have a couple days.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, going through some of the headlines of the week. Sophie, it's always a pleasure to have you. I think it's so funny when you're on and we like have a couple of your headlines that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, you are the City Hall reporter, but it's just kind of funny. We're like, good. Did we get it right, Sophie? Did Julie do a good job with your story?
You guys do a more thorough job than I do most of the time.
Oh.
I forget what I write within 2 days' time. So
Oh, no, we get that.
We know that happens. But before we head out, I just wanted to do some shout outs. If you join our membership program, CityCast Portland Neighbors, you're able to send us your shout outs, basically your thoughts on local businesses, local organizations, all that good stuff. So neighbor Mara D had this to say: Good Junk Sanctuary, a place for sustainable makers of all types and the junk they love. They have a craft meetup every week. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, I have one here from neighbor Matt E. He's saying, I would like to shout out the Thirsty Pourers at the Foster Food Cart Southeast 52nd and Foster. John is very friendly and the tap list is consistently fantastic.
Nice. And also just a shout out to new members Michael H., Amy W., and Thomas R.M. And don't forget, you too can support the show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Portland neighbor. Just visit membership.citycast.fm. And I just wanted to give a shout out to all of the lovely listeners who have been rating our show and leaving us sweet reviews. I think we did a shout out like maybe a couple weeks ago where I was just like, can someone please do this? It's just been happening in droves. Seriously, thank you so much. It is very meaningful to us. Unfortunately,
Yeah, it does mean a lot.
the algorithm, I mean, aside from like us being like, oh, thank you, it like really helps shift the algorithm to our favor and more people can discover our podcast. So thank you for doing that. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me, Sophie, Julia, everyone listening. Have a wonderful weekend.
thanks, Claudia.
Thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you everyone for listening. Our podcast production team this week was John Atariani, Julia Fiaioni, Lizzie Goldsmith, and myself. Our Hey Portland newsletter editors were Rachel Monahan and Natalia Adana. Our host is me, Claudia Meza. Original music by Jenny Conley and Steven Drizos. Additional music by All the Kimonos, as well as Sarah the Instrumentalist, Timothy Infinite, and Gregory David, courtesy of Epidemic Sound, alongside Opal 99 and D-May, courtesy of Triple Scoop Music. We'll be back Monday morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.